at the end of the week, they'd flown down to Brisbane to help out and were getting on a flight to come back to help me out with a PCL or a posterior cruciate ligament, which is one of the more complex cases you can do on the knee sports side of things. And they missed their flight. So here I am on day 5 doing a posterior cruciate ligament, which is probably the most complex case you can do. And I was absolutely terrified. So
welcome to Inside the Shoulder. I'm Kenneth Cutbush and I'm joined by Danial Grevsmuhl today. Daniel, welcome. We've worked together for many years. Can you tell me what's your current position role and what do you do?
Yep. So currently I'm a regional sales manager for device technologies, looking after the sports med and a little bit of trauma in the orthopaedic side of the business, obviously. So look after Queensland, New South Wales and New Zealand in a management role, and then work a little more directly on the customer-facing side of things in Brisbane, working with surgeons such as yourself.
Yep. And so how did you get there? How did you come into this role, into the industry side of things?
Yeah, so 12 years in the industry now, and about 13 years ago, a year before I started, I had a friend that was doing the role up in Townsville. So I'm a North Queensland boy originally, or Northwest Queensland, and very proud of that. And he was doing the role, so it was literally, I had a friend that was doing it and asking questions about, what his day-to-day is and what the role is exactly. Got very interested in it. And got quite fortunate. He actually decided to move overseas for a year and have a year abroad, and applied for his job, and was lucky enough to get the job with Device, and have been with the same company the whole time for the last 12 years.
So it was your first job in Townsville, was it?
Yes, yeah. Started as a what we would now call an associate product specialist, so new entry into the industry in Townsville with no idea what I was getting myself into, and thankfully survived the what can often be the hardest time in the industry, being the first 6 months, and it's presented amazing opportunities to me thereafter. So yeah, started as very fresh.
Right. So you came into going to the hospitals and helping surgeons with the cases and helping with use the products you have and understanding it. And you had no experience. You just gone straight into the hospital.
Yep.
Probably never been into a hospital before.
Certainly not into theatres. Yeah, I think my friend snuck me into theatres for a half a day as part of the interview process. But other than that, I'd never been in theatres. So I was working previous to that as a personal trainer in the health promotion industry. So although loosely connected to sports and anatomy and so forth, no experience at all on the theatre side of things.
Right. And you had a football career before that?
An average football career, a park footballer as we'd call it. But yeah, love my rugby league as everyone does up in North Queensland, and had pretty much played that like just at a local level until the year I started this job, and then slowly started to probably get to training a little less and focus on my career a bit more. So loosely I played for another 3 or 4 years, but not as seriously for the last 12 years. Yeah.
Although I can imagine there was something from playing rugby league even at that level that helped you in going into the hospital and starting to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I love about orthopaedics and working in the role we do as a medical device rep now is, although we go in often as the only rep working in the theatre, it is very much a team event, right? So from the orderlies right through to the surgeon, everyone who's involved plays their part in making sure everything goes smoothly. And we use a lot of sports analogies in the industry, and I think for good reason, because everyone's got to have everyone else's back, and everyone's equally important in the role that they play in making sure that the day or a procedure goes well.
Yeah, right. So where'd you grow up? North Queensland? Where exactly?
Yeah, northwest Queensland. So it's a small town. I imagine not many people will have heard of it. It's 4 hours west of Townsville, so 400k west, called Hughenden. Less than 1,000 people, I think less than 800 people. So very much a small country town, and I lived there until I actually moved to Townsville the day I turned 18. So I'm an adult and took my opportunity to go to the big smoke, as we call it, being Townsville, and I love getting home to Hughenden now, but have pretty much lived in Townsville and or Brisbane ever since.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What did your parents do?
I was raised by my grandparents and my mother together, so very lucky. I've three parents essentially, and humble beginnings for me, which I'm super proud of. My pop was the rubbish truck driver for the local council, and my nan was a nurse actually. Mum, she had some jobs along the way, but my mum has multiple sclerosis, so for big parts of our childhood, she wasn't able to work, and it was sort of a combined family dynamic where we all lived in the same house and all chipped in together to get by.
Yeah, right. You got brothers and sisters?
Two younger brothers, yep, that I grew up with. So I was the oldest of three.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it really was a big transition. So Townsville, tell me about that first year as a rep working in Townsville.
Yeah, it was, as I said, the biggest challenge, but also, when I fell in love with the industry and the job and knew that it was going to probably be a lifetime career for me. So I distinctly remember we do what we call a handover period with the previous rep. And in the first, I want to say it was in the first week, there was a couple of easy cases that, I attended with the previous rep. So that was all relatively smooth. And at the end of the week, they'd flown down to Brisbane to help out, and were getting on a flight to come back to help me out with a PCL or a posterior cruciate ligament, which is one of the more complex cases you can do on the knee sports side of things. And they missed their flight, or there was a delay with the flight. So here I am on day 5 doing a posterior cruciate ligament, which is probably the most complex case you can do. And I was absolutely terrified. So I was absolutely thrown in the deep end, but we survived, and thankfully with a couple of great surgeons up there in Townsville, the case went well. And it was good because it was a little bit of that's as daunting as it's going to get. And we got through it, and felt able to, as long as I prepared and done all my learning and so forth leading up to that I'd be able to take on everything that I needed to thereafter. So it can be isolating at days when you're working in a regional area where you're the only rep physically in that area, but the company that I work for have always had a fantastic culture amongst the team and always felt very supported. And you have to learn incredible amounts of knowledge in that first 6 months to get up to speed, and it's a massive challenge. But as I said, you fall in love with the process and with being in theatre and contributing and feeling like you're actually having a very small impact, or playing a small part in having a huge impact in patients' lives with this job. So feel very fortunate and privileged to have the honour of playing that role. And it's exciting. Every day's a little bit different, which I think is what on the sports med side of things keeps us coming back day after day for more.
Explain to the people listening that doing that PCL reconstruction, 5th day into the job, what do you do actually as part of in theatre? What do you actually do in the role?
The biggest part is obviously the surgeons are amazing and know what they want to do and achieve within a procedure and very proficient at doing that. But often nursing staff, particularly on cases that aren't happening a lot, are not familiar with the case and are not familiar with the instrumentation and the process that happens to achieve what we want to achieve in the case. So our job is what I call all the logistics before the case, making sure the correct trays and implants and consumables are available for the case. And then once the procedure starts, doing our absolute best to educate the nurse just before the procedure and throughout the procedure or the nursing staff to make sure that we're, making it as smooth as possible for the surgeon. So handing up the correct jigs or drilling guides and so forth. And, you have to pick the right guide out of 15 guides that might be on the tray, and they all look pretty similar, particularly in your first week. They all look very similar. So making sure you understand the minute differences between trays, instruments, and that it's the correct one being handed up, and just allowing the surgeon to focus on exactly what they're doing in the procedure, which is hands-on with the patient, working towards getting the best outcome. So it's basically knowing a process really well, following it really well, and working with the nursing staff and scrub scout to ensure that the correct things are being handed up in a timely manner and there's no hiccups throughout the procedure.
Yeah, because it's all very tech driven, isn't it? The actual implants are very technical. They need to be put in an exact sequence with the right instruments, and the instruments are specific to that particular device, the particular prosthesis.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, actually, I'm not familiar with PCL reconstructions coming from the shoulder.
Yeah. Well, the thing with PCL, it's a little more scary than a lot of the procedures because you're out the back of the knee, being the posterior cruciate
All the
ligament.
vessels and nerves are.
You're close to vessels and nerves. Yeah. So all procedures are incredibly important and have their risks, but you're working in much closer proximity to some pretty dangerous structures doing a PCL.
Yeah. All right. So Townsville, how'd you get down to the big smoke?
Yeah, so the first 4 years in Townsville was fantastic. Had some great mentors and surgeons that I learnt plenty of, and there was an opportunity to move to Brisbane to, I guess, take on a new challenge around the leadership piece with the organisation that I'm with. So I moved down and took on the same role that I was doing in Townsville as a product specialist, but was fortunate enough after the first year there that there was some leadership opportunities presented. So I was able to progress into being a sales manager 8 years ago, and that coincided with the time that we actually started working together, which is one of the really important and special and privileged times in my career after we went to San Antonio, I think it was, on a little trip together. And it was a really exciting period, one, transitioning to management and having a new challenge of working, as far as the structure of the organisation, having, several people underneath me that I managed or part of the team that I managed, and just phenomenal professional growth for the organisation at the time. We were able, as I said, very fortunate, partnered with or started working with people like yourself, and we had a 4 or 5 years that was unprecedented in sort of success with the organisation at that time. So it was busy and super exciting, but we all felt incredibly privileged to have gone through that period.
Well, you had Arthrex at that time, didn't you?
Yes.
Arthrex equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, I've been employed by Device Technologies the whole time, but for that period of 4 or 5 years, there was massive growth and uptake in the Arthrex product. And, we're super proud of the role we played particularly in Southeast Queensland during that period. And
well, it was when shoulders were taking off and we were going from, I remember I was really going from, open rotator cuffs to arthroscopic rotator cuffs in that time because the technology had leapfrogged ahead, and suddenly we had equipment that made doing rotator cuff repairs very doable arthroscopically rather than open, which was so exciting.
It was amazing.
And every few months there was a new product coming out, a new implant, a new way of doing things. It was pretty cool.
Yep, new products, new procedures, new instruments, which keeps you on your toes and makes the job really exciting, and lots of new customers as well. So it was, as I said, very fortunate to have gone through that process, and a really exciting time where we were able to gain so much knowledge, working with so many really important key opinion leaders, as we call them in the industry, like yourself, surgeons that we learn a lot from a skill and build incredible relationships that's put us in great stead for the rest of my career.
Yeah, well, I've always so enjoyed working with you because you're so professional and so good at what you do. I know when you're in theatre that the back end things will be totally fine. I can just concentrate on looking after the patient and doing the operation. I know that when I put my hand out for the next instrument, that it will be there and the nurse knows what it is and is familiar with how to actually put it together and hand it to me, which is a big thing. It's very difficult in theatre if you're starting to do the operation, then you have to break off and try and work out which instrument out of, shoulders. They're all different, but just say PCL with 15 different aiming guides, you need one particular one that has to be put together. It's got multiple bits to it, and that becomes quite hard.
Yeah, attention to detail is so important, whether it's a jig and a PCL or shoulder graspers. At a quick glance, they all look the same, and to a nurse, and we all know
exactly.
They're the heroes in theatre with everything they have to do, and think about, if you put yourself in their shoes and look at 5 instruments that at a glance would all 100% look the same.
The scrub nurses are key people in my life, absolutely key people.
Yeah, they're amazing, incredible.
So how do you go about learning a new system? That goes through times. I remember back then there was honestly a new product coming out, a new implant to do something better with a new technique and a new way of using it every few months. How do you guys learn the new product coming out?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm interviewing at the moment for a new associate product specialist, and it's something we focus on a lot in the interview process. I think holistically, the answer is there's many ways to do it, But what's more important is that people figure out their own way and don't just try and copy the way that you or I might try and learn a new product. For me, I've always had a bit of a set process that I like to finish with hands-on learning, and I start paper-based. So it's probably not great from an environmental point of view, but I'll always print off a PDF or a technique guide or a paper associated with how to do a technique, and I'm taking notes, I'm highlighting things. So I'm really trying to get an idea in my head of the process before I get hands-on or touch a product. So I'll go through that several times and set a minimum standard of knowledge or expectation of knowledge in my mind. So that'll always be paper-based. I'll get to a point where I need to then I can transition on to stage 2, which is a video-based if there is one available. So from paper to video, I'll again set a minimum standard for myself where I feel comfortable of getting to that knowledge level with the video, and then I'll, if possible, move on to the hands-on approach. So that's having the instrument or the implant, playing around with it. And that's what works for me and it's always worked well for me. I find that to be the quickest way to get from point A to B. But it's different for others. Some people like to do the hands-on first and do it in reverse. And I think you need to be willing to, constantly be evaluating yourself and what works best for you.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because the big thing isn't learning a new product each time.
It's massive.
And then you're in theatre and you really got to know your stuff because there's nowhere to hide. You're it.
Yeah, 100%. And the reason I say it's important to understand which process works best and quickest to get to that minimal standard is, if I can shave at certain times in the career, there's, tens of products coming out every couple of months. And if I can shave 50% of the time to learn, but to get to the same point, then that's obviously going to allow me to get to theatre sooner and be able to offer that expert advice much sooner. And if I end up only having a limited amount of time and I've figured out the fastest process to learn it, then I can go in competent. But the reality is if I don't figure out a process and it takes me, an additional 2 or 3 days to learn something and I have to go to theatre before I'm able to get to, that minimum standard, then as you said, you're going to get found out.
Yeah. Now there was a time when your distributor company lost one of its major accounts, and that was pretty stressful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really stressful for all parties involved, and at the top of the list was surgeons, and it was a really unfortunate situation that we felt really sorry for our surgeon partners and customers, and they say what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. I look back on it now, and I think we learnt a lot through that period. Both parties or all parties involved, but thankfully, I'd made a choice to stay with Device Technologies, which has certainly been the right choice for me. It's a company that, the values and who we are and what we want to represent and how we want to work with the industry has always been the most important thing for me. And I was steadfast that the right choice for myself was to stay with that organisation, and it's all worked out, fairly well, thankfully.
And tell me about the role you have now.
Yep. So regional sales manager role. So I did the sales manager role for 4 or 5 years, which was I looked after Queensland. And now it's been extended to Queensland, New South Wales and New Zealand. So I think the best way of explaining it is there's 2 roles essentially. Within Queensland, I'm still the sales manager as I've always been. And there's a team of 5 or 6 there that ultimately I'm responsible for budgeting and territory allocations and how we plan and structure our year and our strategy on how we want to work with our customers. And then for New South Wales and New Zealand, we have sales managers in place there. So I guess I am in an overarching role there where I'll still do some of the budgeting, but the day-to-day is still dictated by the sales managers that live within New South Wales and New Zealand. So less hands-on in those states, but more of a guiding management role there.
And how much are you travelling now?
I would travel probably once every 6 weeks to one of the other states. Until very recently, we hadn't put a rep on in Townsville, and that was probably a little bit selfishly because, I enjoy going home and seeing family and friends. So
so the case comes up and it's in Townsville, and Daniel puts his hand up.
I put my hand up straight away and go home and see my cousin and my nephew and my best mate. But fortunately, we have some really good customers in Townsville, and the business was just going too well. So we've put someone there, which has reduced my travel to Townsville a lot, obviously, or at least on the professional side of things. So I'd say once every 6 weeks, I'm 3 to 4 days in either of New South Wales or New Zealand.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So where do you spend your time in New Zealand?
I'm guilty. I was chatting about this to some people last night of not having any personal trips tacked on to the beginning or end of New Zealand, which I need to start doing. But predominantly it's been on the North Island so far, but need to get down to Christchurch in one of my next 2 or 3 trips for sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So Auckland 2 or 3 times so far.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, to people listening, you've come from a little small town, Hughenden, playing rugby league, and now you're flying around the country to New Zealand, so I'm managing a big sales group. What advice do you have to someone listening that thinks, gee, that sounds like a great job for me? How do I do that?
Yeah, I think sometimes I have to pinch myself. There was a point in my life where I thought, I'd be, and I'm not saying I wouldn't be, but I'd be working in the council and I'd be happy with the saying as a kid growing up was, if I have a ewe to swag and a dog, I'll be sweet. So it's a pretty different lifestyle now. I think be inquisitive. For me, I've always embraced the variety that the job brings, and ask yourself, is that something that you would like? Do you want to do the same thing and have repetition each day? And your goal is to get straight home to your family and have a set cutoff time, and that's fantastic. If you want to do that, that's awesome. Probably not the industry for you, being in device, but if you love learning and you've got an appetite to learn more each day, and that the industry is going to continually evolve and there's variety in procedures and so forth, then I would say this is a great industry to consider. One of the wonderful things about working in devices or medical devices is that it's niche enough that there's no set correct path. We do hire physios because of the anatomy understanding, or some pharmaceutical salespeople because of the quote unquote selling process. But in reality, we've had labourers, we've had electricians in my team. So there's no right or wrong person for the industry. There's definitely a right or wrong character and values. And, we have a really clear idea on what we want the values and character and work ethic to be. But as far as the profession that you're doing coming in, it's, all people are welcome to apply or to look into the industry. So I would say, reach out to someone who is in the industry, have a coffee with them and learn as much as you can. And there's incredible opportunities for someone coming in, regardless of what your background is. Look at me, the son of or grandson of a rubbish truck driver from a town of 500 people.
Playing club footy.
Playing club footy, exactly. So it's a hard industry to work in. Like, there are long days, but if you're going to get satisfaction from knowing that you've played an important role, although it's a smaller role than the surgeons and nurses and people like yourself, if you're going to get satisfaction from playing a role in that, then and you'll be motivated by that, and that'll inspire you, then reach out to someone, drop a LinkedIn message to someone that is in the industry, and go from there. But there's no right or wrong path. I think one of the great things about medical devices is we welcome all comers into the industry if you've got the right work ethic and share the same values.
Yeah, that's interesting, because what I see now is that most of the new people coming in, they've done biomedical engineering, or they're a physio or something. So there's still a place for the little kid from Townsville playing club football, hey?
Absolutely. And maybe I'm a little biased on that front because, I epitomise that. But there definitely is, for sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And you have to be willing to, as I've alluded to, work hard, because there are biomedical engineers and there are physiotherapists, and they're going to have a head start on anatomy knowledge and physiology. But there is nothing in this job that you can't learn if you apply yourself to it and you're ready to rip in.
Now tell me, you're a manager, managing a large group of people. What have you learned about people?
They come in all shapes, sizes, and personalities. It's the great challenge of people management in any industry, but again, incredibly rewarding. I have learned that one of my number one rules that I speak to my team about all the time is we do not treat people the same. We treat everyone with respect, and we make sure that they feel welcomed and respected within our teams, obviously. But the old saying of you treat everyone the same is, in my opinion or in my experience, is so wrong. People are different. They have different personalities. They want to be spoken to or approached in different manners. So I think the number one thing when managing people is appreciating first and foremost that everyone's the same, and every surgeon and every nurse and every administrator in a hospital are different. They have different personalities. They have different personality traits. They have different stresses and so forth. So I think it starts with being inquisitive and taking a step back from yourself and asking questions, whether it's in a conversation with them to learn more about them, or evaluating a conversation that you've already had. What was important? What did they say? What were the things that they really got excited about, or their body image changed, or their posture changed in certain ways in the conversation? You can start to really learn a lot about people. So rule number one is not everyone's the same. Absolutely don't treat everyone the same. Treat everyone with respect that they deserve, but understand that you want to tailor your conversations and your approach to different people. So I'd say the biggest thing is you can't have a cookie cutter approach. That's been my biggest lesson.
Sounds to me like you're talking about the difference between perception and perspective, where perspective is putting yourself in the other person's shoes and seeing it from their point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great way to put it.
Now, there are big changes coming in the medical world, particularly around devices and funding of devices. What are your thoughts regarding that? What are the challenges ahead for companies, orthopaedic companies that are producing really cool tech that makes their people's operations go better? The implants and the equipment and so on, and how is that going to look in the future?
Yeah, I think it's with the recent role being a regional sales manager, starting to understand this side of the business a little more, or the industry, I should say, a little more. And there are no doubt that there's challenges facing us. And, you try and put yourself in both parties' shoes and understand both sides of the argument. We've always prided ourselves at Device Technologies at being on the innovative side of technology and looking at products that are going to move the dial. And one of my mottos in life is 1% better every day. We hear it in sports and stuff like that all the time. And so my belief is that there has to be an avenue in orthopaedics to do that. I'm not going to get into the insurer side of things too much, but hopefully there continues to be pathways that new products and companies and organisations and scientists and so forth are able to innovate and to try and get the additional 1%. There's probably more pressure right now than there's ever been for an orthopaedic company to provide, technology and innovation to customers to get it to market. And that's a shame, because the ideas and the beginnings of technology are out there just as much or in a greater volume than ever before. It's obviously the challenge is getting it to a point that it can actually be used in theatre, whether that's an implant, whether it's a software, whether it's a robot. That traditionally, for a patient who has private health, obviously an implant's given an amount and then the implant's put in, and that's worked well to a degree for however many decades. But a lot of the new technologies are going to be things that right now don't fall under a rebated system. So it's figuring out how those costs, or the cost of bringing that technology to patients, is going to be funded. So there's huge challenges there, and people far smarter than myself that are taking that on and figuring out how to do it. But I think just at a surface level, it's incredibly important that we continue to innovate for patients and give them the best opportunity to get to a better point. It's the oldest adjective for shoulder surgery. It's the oldest one in the book, right? A successful shoulder surgery versus has a patient had a healed rotator cuff at different points in the process have been two different things. But I'm a dreamer, and it's the surgeon's call and responsibility, and they're the experts. But if we can be 1% better, hopefully the industry continues to move in that direction. And a PROM or a patient-reported outcome measure or whatever it may have been previously might not be the goalpost anymore. It might be a healed rotator cuff, which I know you're passionate about and working towards, and done fantastic things in that field. And helping us or enabling all surgeons to get there.
So where to from here, Daniel? Tell me about the awards you've been getting recently.
Oh, it's a little while back now, but at Device Technologies, I love Device. It's changed my life, as you can probably tell throughout the podcast. I have the highest opinion of the people and the company that I work for, and feel so fortunate.
Yeah, they're a great company.
Yeah, and over the years, we have an awards, so we catch up once every year, and we do some learning on our products and strategy and so forth. And Device Technologies is over 1,000 people in Australia and Southeast Asia now, which has been an awesome achievement for us over the last few years. But once a year, we all get together, and as part of that, we have yearly awards, and say 3/4 of those are the yearly sales awards or whatever it may be. But then additional to that is the Pinnacle Awards. So really prestigious group of people involved in that each year, and it's incredible to see a large majority of the people who've been fortunate enough to have won it, right back to 10 plus years ago, are still at the organisation now. So it speaks to the retention of, great skill at Device. And a few years back, I was fortunate enough to get the Sales Manager of the Year award through Pinnacle. So it was an awesome achievement. It was actually, I wasn't at the meeting at that time, but it was, I was incredibly honoured to get it, and was able to get together with some of my peers who've also won the award and previous recipients of it every year when we do have a sales conference. And it's it's one of the proudest moments for me. And I know everyone says this, but when you're winning a management type award, it's not for me personally. It's obviously that I've been so fortunate to work with an incredible group of people, and if you don't have those amazing colleagues that you get to work with day in, day out, you're certainly not going to be fortunate enough to be nominated for something like that. Yes, that was a special moment for me to be recognised in a company that I hold in such high regard, and some of the previous recipients are great mates of mine, and I look up to them and they're mentors to me, and it was a really awesome night. And I think it was my third time nominated. So, I'd been the bridesmaid twice before, but it was nice to finally get one locked in.
So what do you get for it?
We
get a little plaque?
Yeah, our year didn't actually do this, but normally the recipients go to Fiji. So a couple members of the executive team will go over to Fiji with that year's recipients, and they have 2 or 3 days in Fiji, and do some bonding sessions and so forth, and spend some time together, which is awesome. And yes, you get a plaque, which is sitting up on my wall at home, front and centre. Very proud of that. And the
in
footy,
the entryway where you come in,
pretty much. The footy jerseys are long buried, but we like to.
Come on, you got a footy jersey up there.
They're sitting underneath the couch. But one day when I get my man cave, it'll maybe get put in a frame. But no, certainly the award's there, and very proud of that. And again, every time I look at it, it's just gives me a sense of pride that I've been so lucky to work with such amazing people in the organisation. Most are still with us, which is great, and some have moved on to other roles, but are absolutely killing it in their profession now, and have been able to progress into the type of future or type of roles that they wanted with a different organisation, which is awesome.
So what does the future hold for you? What's the next challenge?
That's a great question. I don't know, honestly, and I'm stuck at the moment a little bit in. I love this job so much that, if there were future opportunities, I'm potentially shying away from them a little bit because I don't want to step out of theatre, and I want to be able to go in and, see Ken Cutbush do his arthroscopic shoulder surgery, because that is truly my happy place. And, nothing makes me happier than that. So I'm at a little bit of a crossroads at the moment, deciding, I'm naturally a pretty ambitious guy, but I think that I have to become comfortable with, as I take the potential next steps in my progression, that it might be in theatre, doing what I love 1 to 2 days a week, and really making an impact in a different way, rather than being able to be in theatre 4 or 5 times a week at the moment. So it's a question that I'm mulling over in my mind a lot at the moment. But certainly right now, I'm incredibly happy to be able to spend the time with customers and and with people in our team at Device Technologies and learn, helping educate and learn myself, in field, as we call it, and in theatre, which is my happy place. So the future, the wonderful thing about Device Technologies is, as I said, there's 1,000+ employees, and we've got multiple business units. It's not just an orthopaedic business. We look after the Da Vinci robot, which is, it's absolutely incredible what Device has done with that over the last 15+ years, and recently they've expanded into Southeast Asia with that with great success. There's too many different business units to mention, but the opportunity is incredible for someone at Device Technologies. But yeah, I'm just very happy doing what I'm doing at the moment. Yeah.
Do you see yourself leaving Brisbane?
Yeah, look, potentially it's something that may be on the cards one day. Again, very happy here right now. And, I always joke with my friends, I could just as easily move to Sydney and try a career development role there or move back to Huelnden. And the latter, that's probably a lie. I love my job too much, so I wouldn't be able to move back to the country as much as I love going home and having Christmas holidays and riding horses and doing all that stuff. So there's a potential to, in the future, maybe look at different types of roles, or because I look after New South Wales right now, I could move to a New South Wales as well. So it's an evolving discussion right now in my household, but certainly happy in Brisbane at the moment. I'm not sure I could deal with the traffic in Sydney. So
yeah, you got to think about this.
Yeah,
that's a long way from Huelnden.
Exactly. I'm 5 minutes down the road from where we are now in your office and the hospital that you work in, and it's probably the theatre that I'm spending the most time in with you at the moment. So I'm very happy and resistant to changing anything on that side.
So what advice have you got for the young kid playing footy, man or woman, up in far north Queensland from a little country town that wants to see a bit of the world? What have you got advice you got for them?
My advice would be just to dive in. If you wait for the quote unquote right time, you'll be waiting forever. So I did a 1.5 years abroad in London before getting into this industry, which I didn't mention earlier, which was life-changing for me. And sometimes you've just got to dive in the deep end. I think whether it's, for personal endeavors like traveling, whether it's professionally, and if it doesn't scare you a little bit, then it's probably not a big enough challenge. I'm a big believer in that. You've got to be uncomfortable to grow. So the first step is don't overthink it, just do. I often put in some of my presentations and stuff for those that are old enough to remember it, which new entries into the industry mightn't be, the Tom Cruise Top Gun thing, don't think, just do. We need to think a lot about being right in our professions and educating ourselves and so forth. But there's a point where you've planned enough and there's a point where you've learnt enough. And once you're confident that you've done that, or you've done the pros and cons and, had all the necessary thoughts that can go into it, at that point, just do something, book the ticket, apply for the job, whatever it may be. You can always go back to what you were doing. So take a risk. I often joke that and I really hope it never does, because as I said, I love it. But if all of this, fell through and there was some sort of disaster professionally, then I'll go home to Huelnden. And what's wrong with that? I can hang out with my mum and my grandma, and I can get a job at the local news agency for all I care. Like, that wouldn't be the end of the world. So I think if you realise that these things that we sometimes think of as if we fail, what are we going to do? In reality, there's so many options that you can do if something doesn't work out, and that's fine.
So the advice is jump.
Just do it. Do it.
Well, thanks, Daniel. Thanks for coming in. That was a terrific conversation and very interesting. So thank you for listening to this conversation. I've been with Danial Grevsmuhl today. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to the podcast channel on Apple or Spotify. And of course, think of subscribing to the Kenneth Cupbush YouTube channel. Thank you for listening.